So here we are. The Mechilta says, like I said, I started off by saying that there's a bunch of different opinions of how many names he had. 5, 6, 7, or 8. One of the resolutions to the dilemma is, some say that everybody has one name. So when it says 5, it means 5 additional names. When it says 6, it means 6 additional names. So 6 plus 1 is 7, so that's the same thing as the Mechilta that says he has 7 names. But those who say, by the way, some of the Midrashim say, Yisro had 7 names, and then they list 8 words. So let me give you, I'm just going to go through a quick list. The Mechilta says he has 7 names. This is Rashi. Yeser, Yisro, Chobeb, Ra'uel, Chobeb, Potiel, Keni. Okay? The Mechilta the Rashbi says that he had 7 names. Yisro, Yeser, Chobeb, Ben. Ben. He takes out Chobeb and puts in Ben. Ra'uel and Poti instead of Putiel, and Keni. Okay? The Medrash Teichel Toiv says he has 5 names. Yesa, Yisro, Chobeb, Ra'uel, Putiel, Keni. He takes out Chaver, and he takes out Ra'uel. I have some pages here from the Torah Shleima. I have the Mechilta the Rashbi, and I have the Medrash Teichel Toiv that I actually copied, which I'll give you. But in the footnote of the Torah Shleima, he brings all these different opinions. Bottom line is, Yisro either had 5 names, or 6 names, or 7 names, or 8 names. And what would the anti-Semite say? Of course, he was Jewish. He had a bunch of passports, he was busy on the borders, the Greinitzen. I mean, we don't relate to this because our borders are pretty constant. I'm not going to say they're stable, but they're constant. In Europe, borders moved all the time. So you moved from one country to another country, you found a hole in the border, you moved ahin, you moved ahead. It was a whole situation. Now, what dawned on me when I was preparing this is that the fact that some Midrashim say he had 5 names, some Midrashim say he had 6 names, some Midrashim had 7 names, and some Midrashim say he had 8 names, that they're actually focused on the number. In other words, what the names were is one thing, but the number of names. Yisro is a personality. He represents something. The personality of Yisro, does he represent a theme connected to the number 5? Does he represent a theme connected to the number 6? Does he represent a theme connected to the number 7, or does he connect a theme connected to the number 8? Okay, so now, 5, what's 5? 5 is the 5 levels of the neshama. Now, why would that be interesting? Because that would mean that Yisro had a Yechida, which is consistent with the famous Chida that the Rabbi brings all the time, right? Gershon is Gad, Kotten Shnei Ladami. When a guy becomes Jewish, we say he was Jewish all along. That would be the symbolism of Yisro having 5 names. Now, if you say that Yisro has 6 names, the nuance would be that the Rebbe speaks about this in some siches, that the neshama has 5 names. Chamisha Shemes Nikro, the neshama has 5 names, but the etzem of the neshama is the 6th. So again, by saying that Yisro has 6 names, you're underscoring that Yisro's neshama exists on incredibly high levels. Now, if you say Yisro has 7 names, 7 is a whole other story. 7 represents normal. 7 represents order, right? 7 has to do with the days of the week. 7 has to do with cycles. There's a famous Chalsa Chuvas Harashba that the Rebbe brings in the Sichos, where he discusses the idea that 7 represents a cycle. So, if you say Yisro has 7 names, what you're saying is that the names of Yisro represent the normal order of the world. Okay, now, again, so I'm going to go back to my point. If you say Yisro has 7 names, like the Mechilta says and Rashi says, you're associating the names of Yisro with normalcy. Normal, orderly. Yisro's 7 names mean that Yisro's existence has to do with the order, the normalcy of the world. And I want to remind you, Moshe Rabbeinu also has 7 names, and maybe next year, I don't know when, it's not like I oftentimes scribble notes, and I save them from year to year, so I should remember what ideas I can talk about. I haven't written down that idea of going through Yisro's 7 names, but Moshe Rabbeinu also has 7 names. The Midrashim, a normal person has 1 name. You only need 7. So one way of looking at it is 7 represents a great variety. Another way of looking at it, especially since there's a Medrash that he says he has 5, and the Medrash says that he has 6, that 7 represents that the names of Yisro represent groundedness. Yisro has a bunch of ideas. He has a bunch of names. But all told, it adds up to what we would call normalcy as per the number 7. Now, The Midrashim would say that he has 8 names. This is also interesting because as the Rebbe brings this in the Maimorim and the Siches, there's a famous Shals Tshuvas HaRashba, the same Shals Tshuvas HaRashba, which is connected to Vahiva Yom HaShmini, Bris Milah on the 8th day, right? There is a band that's very controversial. Are they Hasidish or are they not Hasidish? And the Bible is just called the 8th day, right? Where did they get the name the 8th day from? They took it from Vahiva Yom HaShmini. That the 8th day, a bunch of stuff happened. Bris Milah is on the 8th day. Shmini Atzeres is 8 days. Pesach is 7 days. Sukkot is 8 days. Chanukah is 8 days. So the Rashba brings in his tshuva that the number 8 represents higher than normal. If 7 days is in a week, the number 8 represents what's beyond normal. So now we have a fourth opinion that says that Yisro has 8 names, and the connotation thereof would be that Yisro on the one hand represents normalcy and order as per the number 7, but that he has an idea which makes him more than normal. This would be particularly meaningful according to the Midrash that says Yisro has 7 names and he lists 8. There's such a shita. That's very weird. Some of the Midrashim would say Yisro has 7 names and then proceeds to list 8 names. Now, the Medrash knew how to count, right? If the Medrash knows that Yisro has 8 names, why does it say 7 names? And of course, what the Medrash is trying to hint to, Yisro has 7 names, namely, the personality of Yisro is connected to order, but in fact, he has an 8th name, which means that in addition to Yisro having an association with order, there's a quality about Yisro which transcends that. So I just invented that pshat, okay? To quickly summarize, according to the opinion that he has 5 or 6 names, we're going to associate the names of Yisro with Yechida, with the highest levels of the neshama. On the other hand, according to the opinions that we are connecting Yisro to 7 or 8 names, we're actually arguing that Yisro represents a certain normalcy, a certain groundedness, and perhaps the transcendence of that groundedness. Go ahead. Shlomo ben Yamin, right? Good, okay.
What was that 6 again?
6 is that the neshama has 5 levels, nefesh ruach yechida, but then there's the lakus, which is even higher than the yechida, which is called yochid. That's the 6th level. Anybody else want to comment? So Rabbi said, here's what's going to happen now. I am going to go through all 8 names. That's all you have is 8. And you have one variant in that. Putiel or Puti, okay? Not Paltiel, Putiel. Each name has a variety of different translations in different Midrashim. So I'm going to go through all 8 names, each of these 8 names, beginning with Yeser, and Yisro, and Chobab, and Ra'uel, and Cheved, and Potiel, and Keni, and then Ben. We're going to go through each one of the 8 names, and I'm going to tell you the various different interpretations of the various Midrashim. And in some cases, it's quite repetitious. And in some cases, it's rather interesting. And that's what we're going to be visiting, okay? The first name of Yisro is Yeser, not Yisro. That's how it seems. The first name of Yisro is Yeser. The Vav is added. And there are 3 interpretations that are almost identical. The first interpretation is that Shahoisir Parsha Achaz B'Torah, that he caused the adding of an additional Parsha to the Torah. The Mechilta de Rashbi, which is basically another Mechilta, says Sheyeser Parsha Achaz B'Torah, that he added. What's the difference between the word Hoisir and the word Yeser? Hoisir means to leave over. Yeser means to add. So, precisely what's the difference between these 2 versions of the Medrash? But they're both saying essentially the same thing, that Yisro added a Parsha of the Torah, and the Medrash, the Mechilta de Rashbi adds these words. Nosale HaKadosh Baruch Hu Parsha L'Hizgadel Bo Moshe Rabbeinu. Hashem gave Yisro a Parsha L'Hizgadel Bo. L'Hizgadel means with which to make a fence. And then the third is the Yalkut Taimon that says exactly the same thing but adds one kvetch. Yeser Sheyeser Parshas Dinim B'Torah. Yisro was zoicha to add an extra parsha to the Torah, and the Yalkut Taimon insists that it's a parsha of dinim, of halachas. Let me explain to you the deal. Okay, let me explain to you the deal. This idea of adding a parsha chumash, you have a few places in the chumash. The Bnei Slavchad are credited with adding a parsha to the chumash. The people who complained about Lama Nigara, about Pesach Sheni, are credited to adding a parsha in the chumash. And the Chazal say, Rashi says, that the Torah was complete. If the Bnei Slavcha had not protested, the Eibishter would have given the Parsha of Yerusha without them. If nobody complained about the fact that they're tummy, the Parsha Pesach Sheni would have been given by the Eibishter unilaterally. But they were Zeicha that it came through them. And the same is true with Yisro. We all know the story that the day after Matan Torah, Moshe Rabbeinu was sitting and the whole nation is standing. I have this fantasy that what Moshe Rabbeinu was doing then is what the Rebbe did by dollars. Moshe Rabbeinu, but the Rebbe stood. Moshe Rabbeinu sat, and people just lined up, and one by one they passed by Moshe Rabbeinu. They didn't come for a dollar and a bracha v'atzlacha. They came to be judged. They had a fight with their neighbor. They had a fight with their wife. They had a fight with their business partner. And Moshe Rabbeinu sat and judged the people. And Yisro says, "What are you doing? What are you doing? The whole nation is going to come to you." And of course, Moshe Rabbeinu's answer, directly or through inference, was, "Of course they're going to come through me. By me, there's no bluff. By me, there's no sheker. You come to Moshe Rabbeinu, there's no lies. Moshe Rabbeinu sees through every situation." To quote the Chazal about Mashiach, Mashiach is going to be moirach v'doin. What is moirach? At Ashmekton, he's going to give a smell, and he's going to judge. Moshe Rabbeinu says, "Of course they want to come to me. With me, they know they're getting fair judgment. With me, there's no bluff, there's no lies." And Yossi says that may be true, but this is not sustainable. This is not realistic. It's not going to work. There needs to be judges. Yebot, right? What's the yebot? The yebot is if you appoint judges, there's all kinds of possibilities for bribery and for disingenuousness in 1,001 ways. And Yossi says, yeah, all of that is true. But the reality of the world is the Rebbe cannot sit and judge every single case of the entire people. It's not a realistic thing. Now in the Rebbe's Sicha on this, the way the Rebbe explains it is, Yisro is saying to Moshe, "You're going to pass away. What's going to happen then?" And Moshe Rabbeinu was saying, "I don't want to worry about what's going to happen when I pass away. I want to deal with now. Now the Jewish people are on my level. I want to raise them up." And the Eibishter agrees with Yisro. Hashem says that Yisro is right, that even though, of course, it's much better to get a dollar directly from the Rebbe than to get it through the Tankisten, it's much better to be judged by Moshe Rabbeinu himself than to be judged by any other Jew. The reality is it's got to be in the world, right? It's got to be grounded. And if it's going to be grounded, it has to be realistic. To be realistic, it has to be sustainable. To be sustainable, people can't step 24 hours a day, wait in line. So there has to be a hierarchy of judges. This is Yisro's chus. This idea would have been written in the Torah with or without Yisro, but Yisro was zeicha that this parsha was given through him, and that's why he's called Yeser. So the Yalkut Teiman adds one kvetch. Yisro didn't add a parsha chumash. Yisro added a parsha chumash which is neged to Dinim. Right? What do you know about Dinim? What do you know about Dinim? Dinim is one of the Sheva Mitzvahs Neneach. Right? Goyim have 7 laws. 6 of those 7 are negative ones. You're not allowed to kill, you're not allowed to steal, you're not allowed to commit adultery, you're not allowed to worship idols, etc. Right? There's only one positive commandment. Set up a court system. Yisro is being given credit. Sheyese Parshas Dinim b'Torah, the whole idea of Shoftim v'Shoitim Titim v'Chal b'Chol Sharecha, there's a biblical requirement that the Jewish people should set up a hierarchy of judges, local judges, city judges, state judges, federal judges, and yes, there is a possibility for corruption, all these other kinds of other things, but it's got to be down to earth. This is Yisro's credit, and that's why his name is Yeser.
Would it happen at the same time?
How could you answer such a question? I just feel, if you think about dollars, you got a dollar from the Rebbe ever? Never. When you think about dollars was, it took a second. Bracha v'atzlacha was very quick. But if you had seichel, you felt this way. But from the Rebbe's angle, dollars was Moshe Rabbeinu meeting every Jew personally. And in my fantasy, in the beginning of the birth of the Jewish nation, it wasn't realistic. But as you get closer and closer to Mashiach, the impossible becomes actual. The Rebbe stood once a week. Anybody who wanted got in line. The Rebbe gave out tens of thousands of dollars a Sunday. Thousands of people stood in line, bracha v'atzlacha, and people used to ask the Rebbe. In my mind, as you get closer to Mashiach, what Yisro objected to became a fact. But in any case, so I can't answer the question. Maybe you could say that Moshe Rabbeinu would have gotten away with it for a while. But save kol save, again, especially the way the Rebbe says in the Sikha, that Yisro was arguing Moshe's not going to live forever. Go ahead.
Do you think that Moshe Rabbeinu actually, if this was a finished thing, he really didn't think it, or was it like with Pinchas, where Moshe Rabbeinu, Hashem took this idea away from him to give Yisro this trust of telling him it's finished?
Okay, that's a great question. My opinion is that Moshe Rabbeinu was looking at the world through his eyes. The story of Pinchas was a mistake.
Right.
When you look at the world through the eyes of the Rebbe, yeah, you ask yourself a simple question. Would a person rather get judged by the Rebbe or by anybody else? You want to be judged by a person that you know that he has no bias and that he has Ruach HaKodesh, there's no bluff, and the truth is going to emerge. Would you want to be judged by such a person or by somebody else? Moshe says, of course they want to be judged by me. Yossi says, I agree, but it's not realistic. It's not the Eibusher created the world. He's not disagreeing with Moshe in principle, he's disagreeing with Moshe in reality.
But Moshe didn't see that reality. I mean, it's so obvious.
It's the same story, right? All of the sichas of Moshe's mistakes go into the same category. The story with the mistake about burning the carbon, that Moshe sees the world from here. You know, in my cliche world, I say, Moshe Rabbeinu told Aaron the Torah, and Aaron explained Moshe what it means. Because Moshe was in heaven, he was not in this world. Aaron says a person loses his children, he's sad. Sadness is not a commandment, you know, just like you have to eat matzah on Pesach and you have to dance a Simchas Torah, you have to be sad when your kid dies. It's a human emotion. I'm sad.
That's how you're learning the Sikha.
That's what Rebbe said. Memches. Not in the Likutei Sichos. That Moshe Rabbeinu says, Hashem didn't say to burn it. Why did you burn it? And Aaron said, Hashem didn't say to eat it. So I didn't eat it. What's the difference? Moshe Rabbeinu says, Kabbalah Sel. And Aaron says, this isn't Kabbalah Sel, this is a Milsa B'Taimeh. I'm a noble. And there's 6 places in the Torah where, quote, Moshe makes a mistake. And in each case, it's a question of point of view. If you are Moshe Rabbeinu, you look at the world from the perspective of godliness, it's not realistic. It's not down to earth. It's raising the people up. So in that case, Aaron is explaining it to him. In the other case, Pinchas ben Elazar is explaining it to him. In the other case, Elazar ben Aaron HaKohen is explaining it to him. In this case, it's Yisro. Okay, the next name of Yisro is Yisro, with a Vav, the additional Vav. And of course, Yisro means Yeser Vav, you add a Vav. And it's interesting, the explanation of Yisro, for the most part, is connected to Maisim Tovim, to good Midos. And I would like to propose that according to Kabbalah, the letter Vav goes on the 6 Midos. So the fact that it's Yeser Vav, Yisro is Yeser Vav, he got an additional Vav, is a catch, is a nuance, is a detail about the choice of which letter is added to Yisro, because the letter Vav has to do with the emotions. So there's different expressions, right? Sheyeser b'masim toivim, Yisro increased in good deeds. In the Mechilta de Rashbi it says, She'osa masim no'im, that Yisro did beautiful deeds. In the Seichel Tov it says, She'hoisir b'masim toivim, that he had an increase in good deeds. So all of these 3 interpretations of the word Yisro are connected to Maisim Tevim. Now, Maisim Tevim could mean 2 things. Maisim Tevim means good actions, but Maisim Tevim also means Midas Tevis, good character. Yisro had good Midas. Now, you must understand who Yisro was. Yisro was a super intellectual. Yisro was brilliant. How much of a super intellectual was Yisro? Yisro is Moshe Rabbeinu's counterpart. Yisro is a very, very smart man. He's an incredibly intelligent person. He's renowned in the whole world for his intellect, for his philosophy. And of course, because of the time and place in which he lived, he was renowned for idolatry. That Yisro was the great philosopher, the great thinker. He understood all the Avoda Zara in the world. He experimented with Avoda Zara in the world. He's, without a question, a brain person. No one would ever think of Yisro as a heart person. He's a brain person. So the Chazal said that he was given the name Yisro with the Vav to indicate that he was Pashat, a nice person. That as great a man as Yisro was, his character, his Bein Adam Lachavere, was so extraordinary that he was given an extra letter, was given an extra name to indicate that this incredibly smart guy was Pashat, a nice person, which is most unusual. It's not very common, it's not very, very normal. And it speaks to Yisro's Mahus. The substance of Yisro was that in addition to his incredible mind, he also had an incredible heart. But here's something interesting. There's a sefer called Chemdas Yama Mateimoni. I never heard of these books, but they're all brought in the Torah Shlema, who says the following. What's the gematria of Yisro? The gematria of Yisro is 616. Taf and Resh is 600, Yud and Vav is 6. 616. Now we have 613 mitzvahs. So the Chemdas Yomim says that he was called Yisro by Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu gave the name Yisro to underscore the incredible sacrifice and dedication he made in going through Gairus. He brings this Medrash Sefer Chemdas Yomim brings that a whole series of aspects of the tshuva. Yisro was a goy, and he became a yid. When a goy becomes a yid, he doesn't have to do tshuva for his goyish life. He's considered a new person. But the Medrash lists a series of things that Yisro did, Pashut, as part of his tshuva, of his refinement, to cleanse himself from his earlier life, to be a proper yid. And the remez is that it's 613 mitzvahs, plus Torah, Neviim, and Kesuvim. That's the remez of Yisro. He was called Yisro because it's 616, 613 mitzvahs plus 3. What are the 3? The 3 are Torah, Neviim, Kesuvim, which is interesting. He could have very easily said Mikra Mishnah Talmud, right? As Torah, Neviim, Kesuvim. Now, as a Dreikop, as a Nudnik, as a thinker, what's the diuk? I mean, I don't even know who the Sefer is, and I don't know how reliable it is. But Klal, he doesn't bring modern Svarim, the Torah Shlema. The diuk is Torah, Neviim, and Kesuvim are all Torah Shebeksav. But what's it between Torah, Neviim, and Kesuvim? It's 3 different levels of Nevuah. Torah is a level of Nevuah, Peh, Hashem talks to you face to face. Nevuah is a level of divine inspiration where you go crazy, you lose control of your guf. And Kesuvim, which is Ruach HaKodesh, Hashem talks to you subliminally, and as a result of the fact that Hashem is talking to you subliminally, you don't even realize that Hashem is talking to through your mouth. But Torah, Neviim, and Kesuvim are all levels of Nevuah, which means that Yisro did tshuva. He took upon himself all 630 mitzvahs. He had no connection to Teresh Baal Peh. He had no need for it. The fact that the 3 left over are Torah, Neviim, Kesuvim, not Mikra, Mishnah, Talmud, indicates that Yisro was in such a high madregi, Pasha did not need the help of Teresh Baal Peh. That's just an interpretation. Okay, now, the 3rd name of Yisro.
What is the logic, sorry, of doing tshuva for makes no sense, there's no need.
Well, let me ask you. A person becomes a Baal Tshuva and changes their whole life, right? Their past is gone.
Like he was just on a journey of discovery. Was he doing Avedas or he was?
So he mentions if he shid in a pratim of Taiva that he wanted to cleanse, yeah. But the point is that halachically you don't have to do it. But Yisro chose to do it. Okay, that's the whole word. Yisro chose to cleanse whatever chesroinus he may have had from his former life, so that his tshuva should be complete. So that his Gairus should be complete.
Wow, that is true.
I know, but Abi Allah, you don't have to do tshuva.
So Gairus doesn't have to do tshuva?
For his former Avedas, no.
Oh, meaning from the verse he did before he...
But was a guy. But he chose to do it because he wanted to be a proper yid. To be a proper yid, he had to rid himself of that association. Now the 3rd name of Yisro is Chobeb. Chobeb means like, I'm sorry.
Isn't that going against the Gairus?
Why?
Starting again, a new lifestyle, now doing Shiva or something from the previous life.
Because that previous life was done in the same guf. And the things that he did in the guf in the previous life, he's still carrying with him. He's not going to be punished for them, but they do hold him back. In other words, he has no obligation. That's the whole part. He chose to do tshuva for something he didn't need to do tshuva for, because he wanted that his yidhood going forward shouldn't be held back by that.
Did you say like basically he worked on changing his personality? I mean, like if he was really into life.
Change to fix his past. I mean, I'll read it to you. V'hei korban oila v'toida lechaper oven hirur avoda zara shehirir ba mikoidem uzvachim shesomach b'tzeisei mituma l'tahara. The 3rd name is Chobeb. The 3rd name is Chobeb, which is of course the same as Chobeb v'teira. Chobeb means ava, chiba, love. Why was Yisro called Chobeb? So almost everybody says the same thing. Number 1, Shahaya Chovev Lamakim, the Eibishter loved him. The Seichel Tev says, Shenaseh Chovev Lamakim. He earned to be loved by Hashem. There's a difference between being loved by Hashem and earning to be loved by Hashem, right? When a person is naturally loved, they're probably loved more. If a person earns to be loved, the love has more meaning. So one Medrash says he was naturally loved, the other Medrash says he earned to be loved, and we could explore this. But the Yalkut Teiman says, Shechiba v'satoira. He's called Chayvav, not because the love Hashem had for him, but the love that he had for Torah. And he brings from the Medrash Rabbah, quote, I'm reading words now, Lo matzinu geir b'chol ha'geirim, we do not find a convert amongst all the converts, Shechiva v'satoira ke Yisrei, who love the Torah like Yisrei. So in short, the word Chayvav either means Hashem loved him, or Chayvav means that he loved Torah. However we understand the difference. But let's move on to the fourth. The fourth name of Yisrei is Ra'uel. The root of the word Ra'uel basically is Reya. Reya means good friend. Like V'hafta, Le'reyacha kamoicha, Reyacha and Ra'uel have the same shayrish. So the Mechilta says, Shahaya kireya lamokim, he was like a friend to Hashem. And the Mechilta that Rabbi brings the pasuk, that he brought a korban and he made a party, and they ate and they drank with Hashem. To eat and drink with Hashem means the idea that Hashem is your friend is a very, very special thing. The Seichel Tev says, not kireya, but reya la'el. Meaning, the Mechilta says he was like a friend to Hashem. The Seichel Tev says he was actually a friend to Hashem. And the Yalkut Teiman again says, Shenasa reya la'el. He earned the fact that he's a friend of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The bottom line is that Ra'uel means that the Yisrei earned that his relationship with the Eibishter was like a friend, right? I'm sure you are aware of this, right? That the Gemara says, the Pasuk says, V'hafta l'recha kamoicha, you should love your friend like you love yourself. And Hillel interprets, what is the meaning of V'hafta l'recha kamoicha? That's called Torah Kul, the whole Torah. So Rashi asks the obvious question. If V'hafta l'recha kamoicha is the whole Torah, how is V'hafta l'recha including mitzvahs that are bein adam l'makom, between man and God? That's not your friend. And Rashi says that Hashem is our friend, that he brings a pasuk, Re'achav, Re'avich, Altaz, the Eibishter is considered our friend. Now, not everybody has a relationship with the Eibishter where the Eibishter is called his friend. Or more precisely, not everyone has a relationship with the Eibishter where the Eibishter considers you his friend. Yisrei had that kind of relationship with Hashem. Number 5, Chaver. And by the way, this is the name that most people take out when they put in the word Ben. Shenase ki Chaver lamokam. Just one of the Mefarshim, I guess that's the Mechilta, says that he was like a friend. Chaver also means a friend, a partner, connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What's the difference between Reya and Chaver? Reya means a friend, Chaver means a friend. I guess there's two kinds of friendships, right? But Chaver means connected. Chaver means equal, maybe, perhaps.
More about love. Like Reya is beloved and Chaver is like a chavrusa.
But technically, what does the word Chaver mean? Connected. Right, chibur, connected. Anyway, number 6, Putiel. Putiel, and the Midrash says Puti. Putiel, Rashi brings, it's a Putiel in Chumash. In Parshas Va'era, Elazar ben Aaron HaKohen lokach loi mibnois Putiel. Elazar, Pinchas' mother, was a daughter of Putiel. Rashi says, who is Putiel? Not Paltiel, Putiel. Rashi says Putiel is two people. Potiel is Yosef and Potiel is Yisro. One of Yosef's descendants married one of Yisro's descendants, and they had a little girl who married Elazar ben Aaron, who was the mother of Pinchas, who was a very important person. There's so many different interpretations of Potiel. Okay, Potiel means to get rid of. Potiel means to shame. To be mezalzel. And Potiel could mean to be saved, to be like Palti, to be spared, to be saved. Maybe I'm typed it wrong, but that's what I wrote. So there's a variety of different interpretations to Potiel. One of them is, Potiel means that Yisrei rid himself of Avoda Zara. Another interpretation of Potiel is that he was put, which means he was mezalzel, he made a joke, he made a mockery of the Avoda Zara that he used to worship. He subsequently made a joke out of them. The Seichel Tev says that he was pitpet, and I'm going to assume pitpet means he made a mocker of Avoda Zara, and he got rid of his association with Avoda Zara. Now, understand what the connotation is. Understand what the connotation is. There's a man I know, who I hope is not watching this, who's married to his wife for probably 40 years. He is one of those terrible entities called an FFB. he's from birth, and she's a Balas Tshuva. And he said to me that every time we pass by non-kosher restaurants, she wants to eat shrimp. She's since her childhood. Mama, since her childhood, she came from with her family. But she says to him, you don't know how it tastes, so you don't appreciate it. I would like to have it. I knew a man who's unfortunately now deceased, very, very intelligent man. And it's your grandfather. So pay attention just for this. Nothing. He was trying to explain, your grandfather, who I had a relationship with as a kid, was once trying to explain to me how I don't understand what it means to be a Baal Tshuva. And it's true, I don't. I'm very naive. Ephraim Lehr? He's your grandfather, right? He's not your great-grandfather, he's your grandfather. So he was trying to explain to me the sacred, and he wanted to say something that it wouldn't get him kicked out of my house. So he said to me, wine tasting. Do you even understand what that means? And of course I don't. People who taste wine, they eat something what do they eat between one kind of wine? Cheese. Why? You want to clear the palate so that you can taste each wine separately. His grandfather was a brilliant man, a genius. And he was very cultured. He wasn't just a brain, he was a very sophisticated human being. He says, I gave up wine tasting. Do you know what it means? And of course I said no. Some people give up many things to become frum, but in their heart, they miss it. When the Pasuk says that Yisro's name is Putiel, the way I understand what these Midrashim are saying was, he gave up Avoda Zara, and he lost all interest in it. It, at some point in his life, became something, even though it was something that he did for a long time. And he didn't do it because he was an idiot. He did it because it was sophisticated. He did it because it had meaning to him. When Yisro went through Gairus, at some point his relationship with Avoda Zara became fair. It's disgusting. And that's the meaning of the word Putiel, the way I understand it. He went out of his way to shame Avoda Zara. He went out of his way to mock Avoda Zara. And the consequence of that effort was that he reached a place in his Gairus where he had no desire for it whatsoever. He was completely removed from his former life. And that's how I understand the neshama, the spirit of Putiel. But there's two more interpretations. By Putiel I got 6, okay? 4 of them are almost the same. The Al-Kateman says, quote, Shepitpeit ba'avodasei. That's a quote. Shepitpeit ba'avodasei. Pitpeit is the same word as all the other Midrashim say. Now superficially you could say Pitpeit ba'avodasei means he made a joke out of his former avodah. His former avodah was Avoda Zara. Shepitpeit ba'avodasei means he made a joke of Avoda Zara. But I would like to say something else. The word pitput also connotes to talk. People who talk a lot are mefatpeit. In Yiddish you would say to platlen. In Hebrew, in Aramaic you would say lepatpeit, pitpute milin. So I would like to just enrich this by saying that he was called Putiel. Shepitpeit, in his avodas Hashem, Yisro talked a lot. In his relation with Abish, he did a lot of talking. There's probably more than one explanation for why he did this, but perhaps it was part of his conversion. But his avodah, Yisro was a great intellectual, was a brain person, and as a rule, people who are more intelligent have less to say. Yisro was mefatpeit ba'avodasei in his avodas Hashem. He did a lot of talking. Perhaps it was an act of tshuva or some kind of a correction and so forth. But this is a very different interpretation of the name Putiel. And lastly, this is in the Medrash Amdeinu, which is in the footnote Torah Shleima, that says a whole nother pshat. That in Aramaic, in Greek, Putya means a candle, means a light. And he says, what is the meaning of Putiel? That the character of Yisro shone like a light. In other words, he interprets Putiel very similar to how we interpreted Yisro with the Vav. That Yisro's midos toivos, Yiddish good character, was such that it shone like a candle, which is a completely different interpretation of Putiel. Now, number 7, the 7th of Yisro's names is Cain. I'm sorry.
I thought we said that it's basically fattened with animals. No,
Rashi. But there's a Medrash Amdeinu. It's Torah. We're talking about, not even talking about Rishonim, we're talking about Chazal. Rashi says that. The Mechilta says that. Yes. Now, Keni has a couple of interesting ones. No big surprises. Keni, Kuf Nun Yud. In Tanakh, in Sefer Shoftim, in the Haftarah of last Shabbos, you have the people of Keni, the woman who killed. Remember, last week's Haftarah was one of the longest Haftarahs of the year. A woman kills Sisra. Her name is Yal Eishes Chever HaKeni. They were descendants of Yisro. So Keni, the first interpretation is Shekine Lashamayim. Kine Lashamayim could mean something else, but this is what I'm going with. Kine means he was zealous. Yisro was a radical. Yisro was a fanatic. His dedication to the Eibishter made him be Makaneh. Like Pinchas, right? Remember the beginning of Parshas Pinchas? Pinchas ben Elazar, Aranichin, Heshev es Chamasi, Ba'al b'nei Yisrael, Bekanoi es Kinosi, when he was jealous, my jealousy. So one of the interpretations of the name Keni is that Yisro also had kanos. He had zealotry, he had radicalism, he had extreme dedication to the honor of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And he spoke up for what's the truth and right. Now, the other interpretation is that Kana Torah, he acquired the Torah. The third interpretation is that Kana Olom Haba, he acquired Olom Haba. And the fourth, he acquired a good name. So Keni means he was a Kanoi, like the Munkacher Rebbe. Kanoi, he was a zealot. He stood up for what was right and didn't care what anybody thinks. And then he acquired Torah, he acquired Olom Haba, and he acquired a good name. Right? Torah, Olom Haba, Shem Tovs, alles gute Sachen. What's the difference between each one of these three? I'm going to leave this alone for the moment. I want to go on to the eighth. The eighth name of Yisro is Ben. The Mechilta de Rashbi says, Shahaya Kiben Lamakim, he was like a son to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And the Al Kateman says, Shenasa Ben Lamakim, he became an actual son to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The difference between like a son and being a son is a philosophy, right? It says in Chumash, Bonam Atam Hashem Alekechem, right? We're Hashem's children. What does it mean? So the Rambam says Hashem loves us like a son, right? What does Alter Rebbe say in Tanya? Every Jew has a neshama. The neshama comes from Hashem, just like a son comes from the chachma of his father. We all come from the chachma of Hashem, and we're literally Bonam Lamok. So one Peter says that he was like a son to the Eibishter, which is like the Rambam. Hashem loved him like a son. And the other interpretation, he was actually a son to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And he says Shenasa, he became a son to the Eibishter. Now, so if you add it up, if you look at all the 8 names of Yisro and all the various different aspects of interpretation to these 8 names of Yisro, you come away with this. And just from a simple statement. Yisro was a rarely complete person. He was a brain, he was a heart, he was a person of action, he was a person of words. He could be kind, he could be nice, he could be gentle. He was very good to people, had a deep, deep relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to the point that he was like a child to Hashem, like a friend to Hashem, like an intimate of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And he also had toughness. When there was a need for Yisro to speak his mind and say what needed to be said if it wasn't popular, Yisro was able to do that as well. So it explains why Yisro is such a, the Zohar says, right? This is the famous Zohar. The Zohar says that if Yisro doesn't show up in the Midbar, Hashem doesn't give us the Torah. Hashem is not giving us Torah until Chochmah the Liyuma Zeh joins and Yisro represents it. What you learn from the 7 names of Yisro is how unusually, to use a modern term, how healthy he was. He was a gigantic man that included both the most sophisticated characteristics of human beings and the most wonderfully sweet characteristics of human beings, and a toughness. And he was Tzipaida's, he was Moshe Rabbeinu's father-in-law, right? He was Tzipaida's father. And his being present at Har Sinai was very, very important for the Rebbe giving us the Torah. Okay, let's stop in Ma'arif.
Does this video get posted on YouTube?
It's going to be edited. The third is
Can you
Chobab.
send me that part about my grandfather?
I have